out of the bowels of Anancy is Anancy Mekmeso. I grew up with a grandmother who came from Cairo to Trinidad and Tobago. She was the village matriarch, a storyteller, and an advisor. Every Friday afternoon, you were sure to see the neighbors, their friends, and their families come into the yard space of my grandmother, where she will be making bake. Fire on top, fire below, or pot bake as some people call it. Sometimes she will take saltfish and put it on the coals to roast. Then she will take it out, scrub it and wash it, and strip it. Squeeze lime or lemon on it, and cut up onions, celery, pepper, garlic, chive, and tomatoes in it. And then she will pour a little bit of coconut oil on it. When the hot bake finished, she was sure to have a pot with cow milk, boiling with grated chocolate and bay leaf in it. Or sometimes she will make lime bud tea or ginger tea. She will share it out to everyone present, and then she will start telling stories. She will tell stories about her life in Cairo, Grenada, catching crayfish by the river and roasting breadfruit. But most of all, she told us stories about Brer Nancy and other folk tales. She made those stories come alive. And that is when I knew I wanted to be a storyteller.
Hello, Anancy. Any one of you all have ever seen a spider? Well, in Storyland, Anancy is the king of the storytellers. So all the stories that I learned it from Brer Nancy. Every one of them. The story I'm about to tell you is one about how Brer and Nancy end up married to a lady that Tiger, who was then king of the forest, was supposed to be married. Sounds familiar, isn't it? You want to marry somebody and someone else take them over. Well, once upon a time, and a long, long time ago.
One day, my grandmother said to me, "You like storytelling, you like to dance, and you like to act." I smiled, and she then said, "I want you to always remember one thing. Anancy is not a tricky spider, but Anancy is the spirit of all those people who I told you about that came from Africa. So every time you think about him as your memory." I was 10 years old at the time. It was Anancy, symbolizing memory of my African self, that motivated me to write Voices of Africa. It was our land. It was our home. It was Africa. There were good times and there were bad times. The good times remain in my memory, but the bad times have left a lasting scar on my people and myself. We cried on the day that they said, "Walk with us." Legba, where are you? Papa Ogun, Imanja, Oya, Oba, where were the daisies that they said, "Walk with us"? In Voices of Africa, Ma recounted life in Africa, being stolen into slavery, life on the plantation. She decided that she needed to teach all who was around her to acknowledge their African self, because the journey and survival of Anansi is symbolic of the ways in which slavery failed to destroy the spirits of the enslaved and to eradicate cultural practices that came from Africa and is retained and adapted in the Caribbean. Like Anansi, the enslaved worked at overturning the structured hierarchy of their environment, and they used coded strategies and ways to ensure cultural retention. Whether it was in dance, songs, or whatever else. And so I also saw Anansi as not only retention, but acknowledgement. And this theory came to the fore in the play Reflection, where the Ajaja dance was used to acknowledge the ancestors, but also retention, where Gangang Sarah tried to pass on all the traditional knowledge to Sarah.
Ajaja,
Clara, Yakum, you want to know. You want to know. You want to know. You want to know why you're seeing me. You want to know where your friends are. You want to know who you are.
But I'm Clara Winchester from Birmingham, England.
One of the times that I felt the dominance and embodiment of that spirit of Anancy that my grandmother spoke about working through me is in the World Championship of the Performing Arts in Hollywood in 2006. Having qualified with 2 performance pieces, arriving in LA, going through dress rehearsals with the 2 pieces, and in the morning of the competition, hearing a totally different piece in my head, which will go on to be the performance piece that won me my first gold medal. Other competitors saw this as trickery and cunning because they presumed I had the piece before. And it is in that same spirit you saw Anancy as one of the most misunderstood folk characters.
Your Honor, she is always stalking me. She mocks me. One day, I raised my hand to hit her, and she raised her hand to hit me back. Sometimes in the night, she jumps out of nowhere and frightens me. Yes, Your Honor. Her alias is Shadow. She calls herself Shadow.
As a writer, director, and performer, I am a strong believer in edutainment. At the foundation of the manifestation of my work lies history, values, and the environment. And giving voice to these elements, having them speak for themselves, yet still leaving us humans with a message, recognizing our journey at the same time through the Sankofa process. When one looks at recognition, for example, where all the Tobago historical sites give their history and the way in which they were forgotten and unkept.
We come together with one voice, representing the beaches, the rivers, and waterfalls. But most of all, to speak for Buku Reef and our other sibling, the Coral Garden. You see, our most famous reef and coral garden is dying, and we believe that each sibling can do more to preserve the aquamarine glory that surrounds us. Instead, we disregard the environment and the reefs, not to mention the pollution. As twins, we advocate for all to play a role in ensuring Mother Father Tobago remains clean, green, and serene.
Looking for sympathy for Mother Father Tobago and anybody else who wants to believe. Well, not me. I don't have time for that.
You're so full of yourself. Look around and see what's happening to it. We're losing the very essence of who we are. We're losing with Tobago-ness, the wonder and beauty of Mother Father Tobago. All they're asking is for we to do what we could to keep the Buku Reef and the Coral Garden alive.
Sarah, I just always hear you say it. Dead, you're bound to dead. And lay your mortal body down. And now, you're trying to tell me and everybody else to click with fingers, work a miracle, and breathe life into them twins? I don't have time for that.
Well, if the spirits of the dead people could have hear you, they would have turned in at the grave. Oh gosh, girl, you come. Me so glad you come.
I couldn't do come, knowing what is happening to my beloved mother, father, Tobago, and then come. I come to make my contribution, say my part.
Come out and face your brother.
Truth be told, that my father, Abasina, was always treated as the black sheep of this family.
But the piece was a satire. And we also saw coming out the fight for who was more important than who. And therefore, the spirit of Anancy manifested itself in the form of satire as one usually sees in the calypso art form. Having recognized and acknowledged that Anancy spirit within me, I saw myself not as Afro-Trinbagonian, but as Afro-Caribbean, embodying, as Calypsonian Black Stalin emphasized in his song, Caribbean Man, one race from the same place that make the same trip, on the same ship. And that is what manifested itself in Island Vibes, the Tobago Island Night production for Carifesta, where you saw individualism as islands, but as a whole, we saw one Caribbean people.